Good morning. We are going to proceed with the first session of this morning. We are a little bit late, so we have to be, basically, we ask the speaker to not to go over time. We have basically 5 speakers this morning. The first speaker is Chafic, Mr. Chafic Chaya. He's going to talk about the RACI, Réseau IP Européen, the RACI Academic Cooperation Initiative. He's the Regional Communication Manager, Middle Eastern region, based in Dubai. So please, Chafic.
Sabah khair. Good morning. Thank you for NREN. Thank you for AUB. Thank you for being here this morning. So I have 10 minutes. I will try to be very focused on my topic. I'm coming from RIPE NCC. RIPE NCC, we are one of the 5 regional internet registries all over the world. We allocate the IP address for Middle East, Europe, and Central Asia. That means if any one of you want to connect to the internet, he or she needs an IP address. So these IP addresses, we allocate to the providers, to operators, to ISPs, and through these ISPs, you can get your IP address and connect to the internet. A lot of discussions and talks from yesterday about the importance of researchers and the importance how to get our national or Arab research to the global community research. So what I am going to talk about, this RIPE Academic Cooperation Initiative, it fits in this objective. That means we are trying to connect the Arab researchers, the national or the Middle Eastern researchers, get them to the global community researchers through inviting them to the RIPE meetings and to RIPE regional meetings around Europe by funding their travels, their accommodation, to present their researchers in front of the global players and in front of the internet community. We had a very successful experience with NREN last year. So as my colleague Ayman said, we have a lot of missed opportunities here in the region. We have people, we have researchers, we have the know-how, we have the skills. So just we need to take their hands and put them on the right track. How we can do this? As I said, we take them to the global community to present their researchers. These are the hot or the main topics that are related to the internet and that these researchers can work with. Network measurement and analysis, and I'm happy to announce that the first anchor, or what we call anchor, it's a measurement device for the internet, was deployed last month in the UAE. So thanks Dr. Asfour, thanks Muhammad. So now we can do measurements for the internet from academic perspective. And this is a good step. So we have an anchor here at the UAE. So our students, our researchers can use this anchor to do their researches, to get their metrics, to get their analysis. Second, the IPv6 deployment. As you know now with the IP, the Internet Protocol version 4 depletion, so we need a new Internet Protocol to, so we can, all these people, or the 7 billion around the world can connect to Internet. And in the Arab world, a lot of things are really on the ground and they are in a good progression, especially in the Gulf region. So IPv6 is another important topic. BGP routing, it's about connecting the networks. Internet governance, with what's happening with WSS and IGF. Peering and interconnectivity, it's another hot topic. It's about the exchange. Do you know that 90% of the Arab traffic, that means if I want to send an email from Lebanon to wherever, to Kuwait, to Qatar, to Saudi, my email goes to London or to Marseille and then come back to the Arab region. So this is a very important topic. It's about the internet exchange, national internet exchange. Internet of Things. You will have a session at 12 o'clock, I think, about Internet of Things, which is another hot topic. So these are the main hot topics that our researchers can work with, and we are more than happy to support them and help them with this. So the meetings that we held and that we can invite these researchers to go there and present their researches are the following. So we have the main right meeting, we have the MINOG in Oman, so I would like to invite you all to Oman, it's here in the region. And we have another meeting for the Euro-Asia, and we have the first meeting for the Southeast Europe. What's nice that the RACI is a yearly context. That means wherever the researcher is ready with his or her application or her research, he can apply to attend one of these meetings. So we have deadlines. These are the deadlines that the researchers should send their application to us. So we have a committee, the best 3 applications or the best 3 researchers, we can get them, put them on the plane and get them with us to one of these meetings to be with the global internet community. It's raci.net, ripe.net, very easy link. We are in the social media, and you can contact me. I'm here all this day. Thank you once again, and really we need to put our researchers on the right track, to take their hands and go with them to the global community. We have a lot of potentials. Last year, in cooperation with Dr. Youssef, we had 41 applications from the Arab countries, 41. So a lot, but another issue is the quality of the research. It's another topic, so I will not tackle it. But once again, I will be more than happy to have any suggestions, any cooperations. We need our Arab researchers to go out to the global community to get their experience, and we'll be happy to support them. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the next talk. It will be by Dr. Tarek Sadek. He's going to be talking about climate change in the Arab region. He's from ESCWA. Please.
Good morning. Thanks, Mr. Chair, for the introduction. I will give you application. It's not really a purely IT business, but it's application how to apply information, education, and research in what we really need on the ground. We need to know how we are impacted by climate change. I just came back from Marrakesh from the conference of parties, the 22nd COP, which took like 2 weeks of negotiation, because the climate change is hitting our region and the Arab region. And we needed to invest on all available resources in our region and not to rely only on global reports and global scientific work, because we need to build capacity of science on this field in the region. So as my colleague Ayman said, that we have RICAR. RICAR is a regional initiative on climate change in the Arab region. It's collaborative work between different UN and League of Arab States organizations. As you can see on the screen, there are more than 11 partners working on these climate change project, because we need to work on modeling, we need to work on databases, we need to work on vulnerability assessment, because mostly we are looking at water resources and related sectors. Why? Because the water resources is priority. We need to adapt. Like most of the negotiation in the climate is how Arab region can adapt to climate change, especially in water, agriculture, food security, and to work with the agenda of SDGs as Ayman presented. So you can see all partners here, and including research centers, because this is a research work. We are doing modeling, not only looking at strategies from the top, but also looking at how we do the work. Like without going really in deep with that, how we work with climate change scenarios. As you can see, there are 4 scenarios, and we try to use in the model some realistic scenarios, how we can get to average one, which is, we call it RCP 4.5, and the maximum one, which is the red color here. The red scenario, as you can see, the emissions are increasing. Why? Because we are not mitigating. We are not taking measures to reduce emissions in the atmosphere. And this is why we call this scenario, it's a business as usual scenario. I will give you a flavor of what outputs we get from this project, because the main focus is IT, on how to build a regional hub to store all this information, to interact with all these mapping results, and to look at all outcomes coming from the models. You can see here at the right side the two scenarios, 4.5 the medium and the bottom one. The more reddish, the more warming we expect. These maps shows that by end of the century, the temperature increase will be from 4 to 5 degrees on the Arab region. This is quite alarming, because we need to take measures to adapt and to mitigate to these results. Of course, to do this, we took this project continued now for the 5th year. So I'm just showing a snapshot of our results to give you a flavor of what we can get and what we will be storing on our IT platform or the regional hub. It's a bit scary. And here, another output from the climate models is the precipitation. As you can see, we always look at water. So the precipitation is the rainfall, and we can see the two scenarios. You can look at the Atlas mountains in Morocco with the brown color. What does this brown color say? Is that there is expected reduction in rainfall about 8 millimeter per day, whatever, to end of the century. So we have to take measures of this. We have to look at agriculture. We have to change crop patterns. We have to take measures that we can cope with more drier conditions. And also we have at the upper river basins, because we look at Nile Basin, Euphrates, and Tigris. So this map at the bottom for the high scenario tells that we need also to look at the drying conditions of climate change. And also, we are hit by extreme events like by sandstorms, by flash floods, by drought. So these measures, as you can see, tells the summer days are increasing. You can see the first really heavy storm we are getting these days. It's too much delayed. Why? This is what the map is saying. At the end of the century, the red color say that the summer days will increase by 40 to 60 days by the end of the century. And this is what means that the summer days, we took a threshold of 40 degrees, when the maximum temperature is greater than 40 degrees. So because most of the Arab Peninsula face these high levels of temperature. So this is another kind of, and this is the maximum length of dry spells, the number of days, the width of the number of days when we don't get any rainfall during these days. So it is what we call dry spells. So this is the science, and this is how we can get all these outputs. We are getting out of these maps. Of course, I'm showing you 4 out of 400 maps we are getting for different outputs of RICAR. And so this is why we needed this. We needed a regional knowledge hub to work with all these aspects in the circles around the regional hub. And to build this hub, we have water data, climate data, impact assessment toolkits, vulnerability assessment, and so we have 3 terabytes of information to manage, to give to users, to give to researchers, and to academia to deal with these scientific outputs to build on in different sectors, the biodiversity, the agriculture. They need to take this information to build on in different sectors. So this is why we are looking at the regional hub. And to build this regional hub, we had a working group formed from different organizations, from different experts, to tell us what do you need out of this hub as a researcher, as a governmental officer, as NGO, as an end user, etc. So this is what we worked for 1 year. And we came up with definitions, like what the objective is to have interactive and online platform and access to information. And we came with some other desired outputs to look at networking, awareness raising. So They need to tell decision makers how climate change is impacting the region and how these messages can be taken to negotiation during the global meetings in Marrakesh or in Paris last year. So this is how we can get messages out of the science, and this is the science policy interface, and we should deal with this expression very well. Here we are dealing with education, with research, with science, but how we can interpret these outputs and these maps to policy measures and to strategy. And this here's the key aspect. And then we agreed on the function of the regional knowledge hub. What do we need to the mapping tools, comparative analysis for different scenarios, etc. So we built in a consultative manner how we can have a hub that serves the users. And these all the contents, again, the users want. Through 1 year, we have been discussing every item of these. What do you need in this regional hub? We need to have learning tools. We need to have model outputs, disaster early warning component. We saw that disasters hitting the region, like Gunu, hurricane in Oman a few years back, and we have flash floods in Jeddah, and now we're getting snow storms in Egypt and Jordan, Palestine after 1 month from now, every year during the past year. So we need to really have a tool that give us early warning how to deal with these disasters. And also, who are the users? Who are the users of these regional knowledge hubs? We classified them as a primary group and secondary group. And as you see, universities and research centers are the leading end users in this, because they need the digital data to build their research hypothesis and to build different models they are applying. So we have these data that will help the Arab scientists and researchers to work more on the climate change, because climate change is a long-term issue. So we are not stopping here, but we will continue to work on this. The secondary groups, they said we can then build the small modules in the hub for private sector, for civil society, and for other users. And then we define some operational criteria, because we need to have technical strengths of this regional knowledge hub in dealing with these sophisticated models and information. We need to have accessibility and reliability. And some, of course, you are experts in IT and system management. Some people say to be accountable and to have a reliable system that should be operational not less than 95 to 99% of the time. We cannot tell the users that when you access the hub, it's out of service now. No, we need to have a reliable system and easy to access. And more importantly, it's free of charge. It's only password protected for some raw data. Why? Because the countries have some reservation on sharing the raw data. Sometimes they need, okay, we can share them for scientists to do the research, but we cannot build messages and policies that are not under our control. So we have to really manage these with password control options. And then credibility and communication. Of course, we need quality control, quality assurance, and to have simple and useful information disseminated through the hub. And as Ayman mentioned about the governance, it's very important. We had a governance structure for this hub under the Arab Ministerial Water Council. It's a council of Arab ministers under the League of Arab States. They said we need this regional knowledge hub, and we need all scientists in the Arab region to be active in the global platforms, because when we look at the global and scientific committees, we hardly find Arab scientists there. Like you can count them on one hand, like 3 or 4 out of like 500 scientists, mostly coming from the developed world. So this is why we are pushing towards building the capacity on this field of climate change to go and negotiate on in the global meeting confidently and with some scientific backing and strength. And I thank you for your attention, and I hope I didn't take more time.
Okay, we can move to the next talk. Is Sara Najem. Okay.
Okay, thank you for putting this conference together. I'm from the National Center for Remote Sensing at CNRS in Mansouriya here in Lebanon. I'm going to be presenting what we call the Beirut solar map. And we describe it as a niche for some sort of interdisciplinary research. So my presentation has this technical part, this educational part, and this collaborative aspect. And I'm going to be trying to go through it fast. I'm going to be skipping much of the technical details because of the time constraint. So Lebanon has this issue of the energy crisis. And we know that 95% of our energy is produced in form of fuel. And like the national production does not exceed the 5%. And we have a yearly increase in demand going up to 5%. And now with the crisis, the Syrian crisis, the numbers are on the rise. So in face of this crisis, and we are a Mediterranean country that enjoys the presence of 3,000 hours of solar radiation a year, to say the least. So one should think of using the solar energy to at least be part of this energy crisis solution. So inspired by the work done at MIT called the Sustainable Lab, where they have produced multiple solar maps for multiple cities, listing some of the few maps, Boston, Cambridge, San Francisco, Washington, and New York City, and internationally in Chile, in these two cities that are listed on the slide. So, and our attempt at CNRS was to reproduce this work and to try to give it as a solution, as a decision support system for the policymakers as well as the local community. So I'm going to just skip through these slides to gain some time. So basically what we calculated is irradiation, a rooftop irradiation. So how much sun every rooftop is potentially receiving throughout the year. So, however, it's, the radiation is time dependent as well as location dependent. So we have to model the effects of seasonal effect as well as the location of each building. And not only that, since we're modeling it in an urban setting, we have overshadowing effects, which I'll probably elaborate here. Okay, so nearby buildings overshadow the buildings in their premises, and this affects the total irradiation every building receives. So what we have produced is, and in the lack of full three-dimensional details of the building, we have assumed that these buildings are all have flat roofs. We know that also we have a lot of water tanks on top of the roofs, so we assume that 30% of these roofs are usable. So with these assumptions and with some data measurements done here at AUB related to the diffuse fraction of radiation and with the assumption of a panel efficiencies of 10%, we have reduced this map. So this is an interactive map that is available online. I'll show it to you on this slide. So this map is available on this link, and it is a building level fine-grained solar irradiation map. So the users can go and click on each building so that they can get estimate of how much irradiation the building receives. However, at the time when we produced this map, we had a problem with the data, the actual energy use of each building. So we had no idea how to compute the efficiency of the solar power at the building level. However, we got some collaboration from EDL, the Électricité du Liban, and they gave us the building level electrical use. So now that we can not only talk about solar efficiency at the building level, but also in the process of modeling the spatiotemporal usage of electricity in town, which gives us some power in smartly managing power. That is, we have we are dealing with the blackouts on the daily level that sometimes exceed the 3 hours. So we're in the process of classifying buildings in the city in a way that the residential areas are to be given power in the after hours of work, so 5 p.m. and on. And while offices and industrial regions of town are given power during the working hours, so that things are managed properly. So with this output, there are so many questions that have arisen, and some of them are related to, okay, so we have this built environment with all its intricacies and complexities. How is it affecting the actual energy use? So because there are these building typologies, there are built in before the war, some are built during the war, and some are built without any forceful regulation. So these buildings are not really efficient in terms of when it comes to energy. So they are probably using a lot of power to stay warm in the winter and stay cool in the summer. So we are in the process of, we wanted to classify these buildings typologies and link it to the heat islands in the city, link it also to the anthropogenic effects, that is the human effect, traffic, human motion in the city. So all these questions have snowballed out of this small application that we have, and this question had needed some answer some question to be answered. So we started reaching out to people with different expertise. We teamed up with Professor Isam La'is, Aram Yaretzian from architecture, Alan Shahadi from mechanical engineering, Najat Saliba from chemical engineering, and Muna Fawaz from urban planning here at AUB, along with Jocelyn Gerard, Maher Aboud, and Wahbi Farah from USG. And our group at CNRS, Dr. Ghalib Faoul, the director, myself, and a PhD student in collaboration with the CESBIO group in France. And so things are snowballing to try to actually address these issues that are becoming pressing when it comes to managing resources in the city and smartly sort of conveying these findings to the policymakers. So. But at the same time, we're faced with a lot of infrastructure hurdles, such as the computational power we have is very limited, and we were talking about questions of high computation complexity. Maybe I should stop here. But the findings of this research had gone, as I said, 3 ways. So we had this research problem that is growing with different aspects and branching off using machine learning, fluid mechanics tools to predict all these aspects that we have and these parameters that we need in our model. We have produced this education platform, which is the website, and where we explain things to the public, how things are affecting the energy use at the local level, and how solar energy can be optimized given the built environment. So I guess with this, I'm going to conclude and leave the floor for the next speaker. Thank you.
The last talk is about the potential in the NREN domain. This talk will be given by René Herpers.
We are close. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Rainer Herpers. I'm coming from Bonn-Rhein-Sieg University of Applied Sciences, and I'm not a typical NREN representative, although I try to do my best to talk about research potentials in the NREN domain. So my talk is outlined as follows. I would like to start with a historic review and motivate my messages I would like to pass over today, and I will then discuss the status quo of digital services in the NREN domain to draw some sample research questions. And it looks like that the intermediate conclusions will be the final conclusions. because in general, I am coming from the free and open source software initiative, and that would be my main message and topic for today. But it looks like that I have to concentrate on the warm-up. But on the right, you see an image of a short-arm human centrifuge. And that's a device that's a German aerospace center where we spin people. Yeah? And today I would like to spin you around as well, but on an abstract level, to open your mind and to expand your knowledge and perspective. And this should reflect that I understand myself not as Bill Gates, so I'm not Bill Gates, I'm Rainer Herpers, and I'm not providing proprietary software, I'm for free and open software. So where's Walid? So did I do my best? Okay, yes, thank you. So let's start with the historic review, but I do not want to scare away, so the historic review will be limited to 24 hours. Yeah, so for those of us who witnessed yesterday the first day, so we have seen some nice talk, and I would like to start with His Excellency Dr. Talal Abu Ghazaleh. So he talked about digital literacy, language literacy, and cultural literacy. And in a moment you will see that as a typical researcher, so if you listen to that, then you start thinking about it and have to try to think about what does that mean. Yeah? And moreover, we heard the title of the keynote of Dr. Stephanie Trill-Bowens from the European Commission. So she is reflecting on the era of information explosion. What does that mean, information explosion? Yeah? And from my perspective, this is really dramatic. Yeah? And then we heard about statements from Youssef Asfour from AUB. So develop new services quickly, yeah, and enable collaborations. Yeah? And I know he's in the audience. What does he mean? Yeah? And maybe today, yeah, I would like to discuss what are the options, what kind of services he had in mind. Yeah? And we heard as well, and unfortunately I forgot the author, yeah, somebody talked about we have to see the development from service providers to service brokers. Yeah? And then there was a keynote again from Steve Cotter from Giant, broadcasted from the Netherlands. And where is Salem? Oh, Salem is in the audience as well. Yeah, that was almost a killer of my talk, yeah, because his talk was on opportunities and challenges of NREN. Yeah? And although you might think of that I have picked my topic of my talk by myself, no. In this case it was given by Salem, so I was trapped, and when I listened to this talk, it was almost a disaster for me, because he was talking exactly about the things I was thinking to talk about today. Yeah? So that means everything was taken, and I rephrased my talk last night, and you will see the outcomes in a moment. Yeah? But I would like to repeat a number of issues he addressed. Yeah? He addressed the motivation and the introduction and the background, globalization, increasing competition. And this is also relevant for higher education institution and research institution. And we as a researcher are not as good as business people. Yeah? That's a very true finding, yeah? In providing digital services. Yeah? And there must be a change in the NREN business model. Yeah? So, and we need to approach more the end users. Yeah? And I'm very thankful to this colleague from the Netherlands, and would like to come to an intermediate conclusion of the historic review. There's something in the air. Yeah? So there must be changes, and there are development processes underway in the research and education community. And that's a typical German thing. So we have this crazy gender issue. So we have to always call females and males, and therefore I adapted that to communities because I believe that we have to really distinguish. So the community, the research and education community in Germany is different as the community in Lebanon and in Jordan and in France and in Netherlands. And we have to take account that there are differences. Okay, what are the consequences out of this? So let's do the talk analysis. Yeah? And this is exactly what a researcher is doing, can ask crazy questions. But here's a huge list. Yeah? So what are the consequences of all those statements? Yeah? So what kind of changes and development processes do we see in the future? Yeah? And who are the end users, the service users? Yeah? And what kind of IT and digital services are we talking about? Is this exactly the same? Yeah? In every community, in every society? Yeah? And who are the target groups? Are the target groups homogeneous, or so how do they look like, and what are their needs? Yeah? And what are the prerequisites? And I know that most of the people in the audience are having a technical background. They are the NREN VIPs and the stakeholders from this perspective. Yeah? But I think we all agree we are facing challenges, but we are also facing opportunities, like my colleague was stating yesterday. Yeah? And yes, that's the question from my particular domain: what role does open source software will play in this context? Yeah? And I hope that we do have at least some few policymakers with us, or at least take that with you home and address that as soon as you meet those people. Yeah? So we have to involve people to move forward. So, and this brings me now to the core of my talk. Yeah? So we are facing now mobile communication everywhere, every time, yeah, by everybody. So I do not even have to ask the question, who has a smartphone, a mobile device? Everybody has it. Yeah? So, and what are the consequences of that? But there is one question I would like to raise and ask the audience. Who is using Eduroam? Oh, quite a number. Yeah? But this is a great service. Yeah? But this service is restricted to the research and education community. And we have to ask the question, why? Yeah? So this is so great. Yeah? So I travel from Germany, I travel the world, yeah? And I do not have to hassle with a wireless LAN. It's getting connected by itself. Yeah? So why can we roll out this to the global society? Yeah? And I'm not saying this has to happen right now. Yeah? So there's a transition process. Yeah? So why not thinking stepwise and saying all alumni of the university will keep their accounts, and then they can still connect with Eduroam. And you know it from your communities. Well, if the father has one account, then the entire family has an account. Yeah, so then we can spread it out. Yeah, so relatives and other people. Yeah, so that means, yeah, so there are great services already available for the research and education community. Yeah, but how can we spread it out? And my message is so to reflect our duties as scientists and as researcher. Yeah? So our duty, and this is what the president is telling me almost every second day, your duty, Rainer, is to serve the community. Yeah? And so far I was thinking of, okay, my job is to educate the people and to pass over knowledge. But it's even more than that. Yeah? So we have seen that in the past as well, and this brings me back to the historic review. So the universities and the research institutions had to be, in the past, the seeds of bigger things of the society change. So talking about gender, talking about other things. And I have put on my slide public transportation. Yeah? So, which is another good example how things can change. So some European cities have already started to give public transportation for free. And all of a sudden, everybody is using it. And all of a sudden, the services are increased. And all of a sudden, pollution is going down. Yeah? So why not transport that to the digital society? Yeah? And I'm not saying that we have to provide the services for free. Yeah? So I can think of business models, yeah, stepwise, yeah. And but before I come to that, I would like to step back a bit. Yeah. So from my background, I'm the chair of the Institute of Visual Computing, and yes, there's unbelievable lots of app development and game development in the air, and that's really boosting the things, and it's producing tons of data, and yes, but today I'm talking about more. Yeah? I'm talking about services for the communities, for the general communities. And my message is get out of your ivory tower as a researcher, as a technician, yeah? And think about what can you offer for whom outside of the academic world. Yeah? And that's the story. Develop IT services for the entire society. Yeah? But for that, we need to know which communities, yeah, we can serve and support. Yeah? And I totally understand we cannot do everything at once, so we have to do a stepwise thing. Yeah? And we have to think about which services. Yeah? So, and as I mentioned before, I'm not arguing that we have to provide that for free. Yeah? Maybe as public transportation in Hasselt in Belgium, yeah? So the core in the inner part of the city is for free, and if you go far, then you have to pay something. Yeah? So the business people are smart to come up with business model and payment model, yeah, to make you addicted to it. Yeah? So, and this brings me to the slide of the sample research question, and this is a loop. Yeah? I go back to the slide you have seen before of the talk analysis. Yeah? And if you are saying, oh, Rainer, are you crazy? You can't ask this question to a scientist. Yes, I have to ask those questions, and we have to find answers. Yeah? And although I know that most of you are tech people, yeah? So what are the consequences? The consequences, we have to team up with people from social sciences. Yeah? We have to team up with people from business and economy. Yeah? And that means we have to identify the most important and requested community services. Yeah? And maybe as a computer scientist, as an engineer, we are not the right person to find out. Yeah? And how to focus on which sub-community problems, and how to roll out community services. This is not the domain we are good at. Yeah? So that means these are not really technical questions we are used to answer and work on. Yeah? But there is a candy for the technicians. There's a part as a technician we can work on. Yeah? So there are still open questions. We heard that in the keynote in the morning very early. Yeah? So on security, on net neutrality, and on, from my perspective, on data science in general, on compression. Yeah? So as an image processing guy, still the data representation is not resolved, and other things. Yeah? And yes, the good news is there are still technical questions left we can work on. Yeah? But you see, my heart for today is on the first part. Yeah? So we have to address these non-technical questions as well. As this brings me to the conclusions, and the conclusions are twofold, as mentioned before. There's a social component. Open up the IT digital services at your higher educational institution and research institutions to the non-academic world, and expand and extend your outreach, and maybe stepwise. And yes, there's a scientific component, research on data sciences, and in combination of social sciences, data engineering, security, and all the other facts. And the remaining question, or not the remaining question, the remaining message is you all are invited to contribute. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks for all the speakers. I know that it's not easy really to squeeze your talk in real time. So thanks a lot again. So we recuperated. Yes, we have now a break for 15 minutes. So.